time for the Minnesota Vikings starting on Monday. That's when the legal tampering process begins, Monday, March 11th. And then on Thursday, that's when the official free agency period begins, March 14th, next Thursday, as far as when pen can officially go to paper. So there's a huge opportunity for the Minnesota Vikings next week, the free agency period. This is Realistic Randy of the Mediokr Best Sports Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Talked about the last couple of weeks as far as how the Vikings have a couple of opportunities to free up some significant cap space. Now, whether they do that or not is completely up to them. Now, Mike Zimmer, he has an affection with his guys, especially on the defense, guys that he has personal relationships with or guys that he considers their sons. So I'll be a little bit weary about that because last offseason, for example, 2018, pie out of the sky rumor comes out of nowhere. The Vikings are looking to trade Anthony Barr. And then what happened? Mike Zimmer got right up on that podium like almost immediately and said, we are not, slammed his fist down on the podium, we are not trading Anthony Barr. And if I'm Rick Spielman, I'm like, who are you, Brad Childress? You do not dictate this roster. If I was Rick Spielman, I would tell Mike Zimmer for this period start next week, free agency, I would tell Mike Zimmer, go to your ranch in Kentucky, have a glass of red wine, and chill out. You will coach the players that I will put together for you because in case you haven't noticed, we are both on a hot seat in 2019. And it's funny because after that incident where Mike Zimmer was like, we are not going to trade for Anthony Barr, because it wasn't an official report. It just came out. It was just a rumor that swirled from nowhere. That showed me with Mike Zimmer that he pays attention to the rumors. He pays attention to social media. Or if he doesn't personally do it himself, other people might do it for him. For example, at the end of week 17, right, when they lost to the Chicago Bears, you weren't competitive at all. All you had to do was win, and you make the playoffs. And your team, Mike Zimmer, looked like they had no interest in playing whatsoever. That very next day, I said, fire Mike Zimmer. He should be fired. And it's funny because Corey Zimmer White, his daughter, came after me on Instagram. And it's funny, I didn't tag her in the video. I didn't even know that Mike Zimmer had a daughter. I didn't tag her in the video. It's like she must be searching her father's name on social media, just seeing what people are saying. And she found my video, watched it, called me an idiot, and then blocked me on Instagram. So it's funny because that showed me they pay attention to what's being said about them in the Vikings organization. But if I was Rick Spielman, I'd be like, dude, go chill out somewhere. You will coach the team that I put together. Now, having said that, as much as I get on Mike Zimmer, because I do think he's a fraud of a head coach, I think he's more of a glorified defensive coordinator than anything else. I do think that this Vikings team has a chance to be successful in 2019. I think the defense will be top 7 in the league, even if they lose. You need to bring back Sheldon Richardson. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I think they'll drop off a little bit. I think they'll be top 7 in the league as far as defense is concerned. But if this team is going to have any success as far as making it to the playoffs, and not just making it to the playoffs, winning a game or two, basically making a playoff run, it's going to be because of the offense. It's going to be because Gary Kubiak and Kevin Stefanski, they put together a solid offensive game plan around Kirk Cousins and company to be successful, and Rick Spielman actually addresses the offensive line through the draft. So I do think this team has a chance to be successful. Whether they take on those moves that need to be made or not is completely up to them. As far as free agents that the Vikings should be looking at, Sheldon Richardson, Anthony Harris, potentially C.J. Mosley. I think Eric Wilson will be a good replacement for Anthony Barr, an adequate replacement for Anthony Barr. But if not, maybe C.J. Mosley, Aldrick Robinson. And you know what's funny? On Score North this past Tuesday, I talked about how I would like to bring back Latavius Murray, but I did think that this running back core with a Dalvin Cook, a Mike Boone, and a Rock Thomas, I think would be really solid even if Latavius Murray doesn't return. Well, guess what, damn it? Now that Rock Thomas was arrested on felony weed possession, you really need to bring back Latavius Murray. Or if not, you can bring in a Carlos Hyde or a TJ Yeldon. You can bring in one of those dudes because potentially if this thing with Rock Thomas escalates any further, he's going to get cut. Hands down. Now, here's the thing that I will say about this. If you're going to smoke some weed, come out to California. Go out to Washington. Go out to Colorado. Now, keep in mind, you could get randomly drug tested. I am not endorsing NFL players to go out there and smoke weed. I'm not doing that whatsoever. But stop being stupid. Stop getting arrested. Stop putting yourself in a position where you're putting your career in jeopardy. So now all of a sudden, you need to bring back a Latavius Murray or a Carlos Hyde. He's visiting the Chiefs on Monday, or bringing a TJ Yeldon. I think TJ Yeldon, I think he's pretty good. I think he's like a he's kind of like a poor man's Jerick McKinnon. Not necessarily all that great between the tackles. He can if you need him to, but he's a really good all-around running back, can catch out the backfield, can pass protect a little bit. I would like TJ Yeldon actually a lot the more that I think about that. And then in Ndamukong Suh, he did a little bit of a subtweet talking about where should I go? Where do you think I'm going next? The Arctic or Minnesota? And when I heard the Arctic, I'm like, what are you talking about? What is that, Chicago? Like, is that the Arctic as far as the NFL teams are concerned? Or is it the Arctic and Minnesota is the same thing and he's basically just trolling everybody? But anyway, if he is alluding to the fact that he's going to visit with the Vikings on Monday, I actually wouldn't be surprised. I could kind of see why Rick Spielman would sign on an Ndamukong Suh for 1 year, because let's not get it twisted. Ndamukong Suh is all about his money, as much money as he can, and rightfully so. All NFL players should do that. Not everybody can be Tom Brady, where you know you're going to keep your job, you know you're going to be winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl, so you take pay cuts after pay cuts for the betterment of the team. After his stint with the Detroit Lions for however many years he played with them, I don't remember exactly who asked him this, but they basically, like, during his free agency period, which team are you going to sign to? Who are you going to go to next? And he basically said, my agent dictates where I'm going to go to next. And that basically means whoever I can get the most money from, that's where I'm going to go. And he ultimately went to the Miami Dolphins. Then he signed that 1 year, like $14 million-ish deal with the LA Rams last year. Now, he wasn't really all that great, like the vintage Ndamukong Suh, like we've come to know through his years with the Detroit Lions and in some cases with the Miami Dolphins. But I could kind of see why, if they're going to sign Ndamukong Suh to like a 1 year, because he's not worth $14 million this year. Oh, no. But let's say he's worth a $10 million for 1 year, which is basically right on par with a per year average of what you'd be looking at with a Sheldon Richardson. I can see why they would do it for 1 year, and then if they swing and a miss, they will go into it in 2020. Into the draft to address the defensive tackle, assuming that they're going to be here in 2020 as far as Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer. But I can see why they do that, but I personally would bring back Sheldon Richardson. And you know what's interesting? Something that doesn't get brought up enough with Sheldon Richardson is, and I'm about to bring up something, this is not to denigrate Sheldon Richardson. This is really to paint a bigger picture as far as how great he's turned his life around. In 2018, when we brought him on into the offseason, I don't think I said this in my podcast, but I was definitely thinking, I was like, I don't know about this dude. This dude has character issues, and I thought back to 2016. I think this was in 2016. With the New York Jets. New York Jets, he went on a high-speed chase, got chased by cops, 143 miles per hour in a Bentley. Car reeked of weed, just smelled like marijuana all throughout, with a loaded handgun and a 12-year-old kid in the car. And at that point, and it's funny because during the NFL offseason, what do we say about players? Oh, just don't get into trouble. Please just don't get into trouble. No one get arrested, please. It's funny because we don't say that about Major League Baseball players. We don't say that about NBA players. We don't say that about anybody but football players. And I don't care if people got a problem with me saying this. I've said this for years. Something about NFL players, they always just seem to find their way to get in trouble during the offseason. NBA players, we don't say that about them or any other sport. But anyway, with Sheldon Richardson, I was like, I don't know, man. I know it was Seattle. I don't think he had any issues with that 1 year or 1 or 2 years he had in Seattle. But I was like, a little bit hesitant. But to his credit, in 2018, you didn't hear a peep about Sheldon Richardson off the field. The only thing that you heard about Sheldon Richardson was his on-field production, his on-field performance. He was a damn good player and didn't have any problems off the field. That's some good stuff, and I'm very proud and very happy that he's turned his life around. But anyway, I would bring back a Sheldon Richardson. But moving forward from that, I don't on the offensive side of the ball, because I've seen on Twitter, oh my God, TJ Lang, he got released by the Detroit Lions. Oh my God, John Sullivan, the Rams are not going to pick up his option. What if we bring back a TJ Lang? Or what if we bring in a TJ Lang? What if we bring back John Sullivan? It's funny, we go gaga over these old ass linemen. By the way, TJ Lang, he missed 10 games last year due to a neck injury. Doesn't really sound all that great. And John Sullivan has been on the decline. It's funny, we go gaga over this patchwork offense. We can bring in this offensive lineman, and they could be okay, and maybe we can flip this around and do this and do that. But when it comes to first-round offensive line talent, we're like, nah, I don't know. Oh, we don't need to reach. We don't need to reach at all. Best player available. No. We don't need to do that at all. And here's what's funny. If we have evidence year after year after year that the offensive line is the one thing on this team that's preventing this team from making a playoff run. In other words, the difference between this team going 8-7-1 and not making the playoffs or making a playoff run, possibly being a title contender, is the offensive line. That's the one thing you need. I don't give a damn about best player available. Shore up the offensive line. We're willing to go after old-ass offensive line who's declining in talent. But when it comes to first-round offensive linemen who could also be cheap and also could have a lot of talent, I don't know. I just don't think I could do that at all. It's funny. It's basically the guy at the bar that meets a woman, and she tells you all about her life. She's got like 6 kids, been divorced like 17 times, and she's gotten fired at every job that she's ever had within 3 months, and just all these just terrible things about her. But it's like, you know what? At the end of the night, when it's closing time, you've already got your great-grandmother's wedding ring out, ready to propose to her by the end of the night. But this other woman that you meet got her head on straight, good education, a pretty good job that she's been at for a couple years, and she's ready to take the world on by storm. And you know what? You're like, yeah, no, but what about her values? I just don't want to rush into anything. No. We don't need to do that whatsoever. It's just fun. Now, I will say this about the offensive line. This could be a huge risk, but something that I could kind of understand why the coaching staff would do this is because, let's say, because Brian O'Neill has played some left tackle before in his college days. Now he needs to get his strength up, because it's one thing to play right tackle against the left tackle or against the right ends at left tackle. You're going against the best of the best pass rushers, okay? So you need to be strong. Get a little bit stronger. But let's say if you move Brian O'Neill to left tackle, you move Riley Reiff to right tackle because he plays some right tackle in Detroit. And let's say you bring in a Roger Saffold, free agent out of L.A. with the L.A. Rams, to play guard. And then you've got Pat Elflein at your center. And then you could go after a Cody Ford or somebody like that in the with the 18th pick to get a guard to play that opposite guard spot. I could kind of see the method behind the madness with that. With that said, there's a lot of risks there, because if you ruin Brian O'Neill, if you ruin his psyche at the left tackle spot, you all of a sudden went from a future right tackle, to suddenly a guy that's scared to play football or just got beat up and can't concentrate anymore. And then Riley Reiff, who's to say that he can be serviceable at right tackle? Certainly he's not been serviceable at left tackle, at least in 2018. But there's a lot of risk there. But I could kind of see the method behind the madness with that. But every time I'm like, invest your first two out of, not your first two, but 2 out of your first 3 picks, and the draft should be offensive linemen. I don't understand why we're so afraid of that, because guess what? Drafting a best player available, whether it's a linebacker or defensive tackle or an edge rusher, whatever it is, does not give this Vikings team a better chance of improving their 8-7-1 record from last year. You can get away with an Eric Wilson. You can't get away with a crappy offensive line. So that way, if you put together a really good offensive line, you could really put the onus on Kirk Cousins after that. That's where you could really judge him. And I brought up on Score North on the Tuesday's podcast, because I didn't have the numbers in front of me, but I do now as far as the Indianapolis Colts, right? Andrew Luck, he's had offensive line problems pretty much his whole career with the Indianapolis Colts. They finally got their head on straight, and they said, you know what? We are going to invest in the offensive line. We're going to really do it. 2 out of the first 3 picks were on the offensive line. Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith. And all of a sudden, in 2017, they went from the 18th, according to Football Outsiders, they went from the 18th ranked run blocking offensive line and the 32nd ranked pass blocking offensive line to where after drafting 2 out of your first 3 picks in the offensive line, they jumped up to the fourth in run blocking, and second in pass blocking offensive line, according to Football Outsiders. And suddenly, they made the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. They went past the Houston Texans in the wild card round. They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round, but suddenly they were winning again, okay? Why is it that we're afraid for this team to win? We look at every reason, offensive lineman in the first round. No, I just don't know. We don't need to do that. But you'll trade up, if you're Rick Spielman, you'll trade up to draft the damn kicker, won't you? That is absolutely not. Rick Spielman, to me, he's like the contestant on Wheel of Fortune that buys the most unnecessary vowels, right? You see, let's say the category is phrase, and you see solid as a rock, but all the O's are gone. You know it's clearly solid as a rock. All the O's are gone. And then all of a sudden, this one dude, he's like, I'd like to buy a vowel, please. An O. And it's like, you are an idiot. You just bought like 4 O's. You lost like $1,000 for a vowel that you knew was there, and you could have solved it and still kept your $1,000. They are stupid. If I went on Wheel of Fortune, I would clean house with all those idiots that buy vowels after vowels until there's no more vowels left. And all of a sudden, you spent money to help me solve the problem or solve the puzzle. They are idiots. I would clean house on Wheel of Fortune. But don't get cute. Don't get cute. Address the offensive line through the draft. No more patchwork, and you'll be fine. But this is a huge opportunity for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm very excited to see what they do. This team has a chance to be successful in 2019. Whether they make the moves necessary, because you're going to have to free up cap space, that's going to be up to them. But Mike Zimmer needs to stand down because, damn it, you're on the hot seat. And if you can continue this all you want to we're not going to do. You are not Brad Childers. Rick Spielman's the GM. Let him take control. You coach the players that are there. So anyway, we do this twice a week. Mediokr Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy. You can check out the podcast Tuesdays on Score North and Saturdays on this channel. Twitter @realistic_Randy. Facebook @realistic Randy. We will see you on Tuesday.